Kickstarter, and crowdfunding in general, has made funding video games we otherwise wouldn't have gotten via traditional means possible. I have pledged to many, and I mean many, video game projects over the years. Something over 30. And a couple video game related books. About half the games that I have backed are point-and-click adventure games. And I have been very lucky in a sense that every single game that I have backed were not only finished and delivered, well, except for one, but were also either great games or at the very least acceptable in my book. So in that sense, I have not backed a video game project that I ended up regretting later. But there is one Kickstarter regret that I have. I didn't back Thimbleweed Park in 2014, an old-school 2D point-and-click adventure game developed by Terrible Toybox, founded by none other than Ron Gilbert, the designer and creator of the original Monkey Island games. Thimbleweed Park was funded in December 2014, raising over $626,000 with 15,623 backers, and was released on March 31st in 2017. I started to play it for the first time on the very next day. Ron Gilbert and his longtime colleague Gary Winnick wanted to create a classic adventure game in the spirit of the past titles from the 90s, the golden age of adventure games, like The Secret of Monkey Island and Maniac Mansion, that set the bar high for what adventure games could be. Thimbleweed Park was supposed to be a new game that got to the core of what made classic point-and-click adventure games so special, deep, challenging, and fun. And I'm happy to say that Thimbleweed Park has accomplished exactly that and is my most favorite adventure game to date. Yes, even surpassing The Curse of Monkey Island, one of my most cherished games from my childhood. So let's dig in and find out why this game is so great. My name is Siperos and these are my thoughts on Thimbleweed Park. The story takes place in 1987 in Thimbleweed Park County in United States. The game starts rather ominously as you first play as this German guy who had just arrived at the small town of Thimbleweed Park. He has a secret meeting with someone at the bridge by the river. But unfortunately for him, he wasn't invited to talk business and was murdered instead by a shadowy figure. Soon afterwards his body is found and two federal agents are sent to investigate the murder case. Agent Ray and Agent Reyes. However, the two agents seem to have their own personal reasons to come to Thimbleweed Park. But first, they must solve the murder. During their investigation we meet many characters living in the mostly abandoned small town of 80 residents, like the sheriff who seems really reluctant to help out the feds with their investigation, even going as far as to hinder it. We'll also meet our other playable characters, each with their own backstories, personalities and goals. But once the murderer is found and arrested, the game won't just end there. Oh no, the murder mystery is only about half of the game. The second half being about a bigger mystery, for the town is not what it seems. In fact, thinking back, the murder mystery feels like a big red herring that tried to distract us from the real truth. And all the playable characters still have their own answers to find and objectives to accomplish. All their paths leading to the same big revelation that will change them and everything they thought they knew. It's quite a mind-blowing revelation. And fourth wall breaking, which this game likes to do a lot by the way, as soon as in the first 15 minutes. The game is constantly reminding you that this is an adventure game. I have been reading that some people were not satisfied with the ending. Without spoiling it for you, it's very similar to the bizarre ending of Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge, which was also somewhat controversial within the fandom at the time. But love it or hate it, at least Thimbleweed Park's ending was unexpected and memorable. For me anyway. Existentially deep and absurd, reminding me of The Matrix, and it didn't feel rushed either. It was quite a wild ride, and it felt fitting to Ron Gilbert's style of storytelling. Although I do admit that the game does leave some major loose ends behind, so the ending doesn't perfectly wrap up everything. But I liked it and most importantly, loved the journey itself. Now let's talk about our diverse and colorful cast of characters. Thimbleweed Park has not 2, not 3, not even 4, but 5 playable protagonists. Starting with the 2 federal agents, Senior Agent Angela Ray and Junior Agent Antonio Reyes. Ray, voiced by Nicole Oliver, reminded me a lot of Agent Scully from the X-Files.
Why are you in the sewer?
Enjoying the sights and smells, practicing my sewer spelunking hobby, hunting for Ninja Turtles. Take your pick.
You go spelunking?
No, you moron. Someone attacked me when I was investigating the alley behind the diner.
But more snarky, sarcastic, not much of a people person, and she means business. wanting nothing more but to get the murder case solved so she can get the heck out of the dump of a town, only to return shortly after in secret for her real objective. Reyes, voiced by Javier Lacroix on the other hand, is more inexperienced, naive, friendlier, and more approachable compared to his senior fellow agent, and is overall, in my opinion, the least interesting character of the bunch. He also came to solve the murder, but as a means to come to Thimbleweed Park to seek answers to a more personal matter.
It's my father's old pocket watch, but it's broken, and only a professional will be able to fix it.
Then we got Dolores Edmund, voiced by Elise Cates.
Uncle Chuck wants me to program his factory computers, but I just want to design games. I wish I could get a job at a company like Mucus Phlegm Games.
An heiress of the wealthy and well-respected Edmund family who became rich by starting a pillow factory, making pillows for the war effort in the past, which also made Thimbleweed Park a bustling town back in the good old days before the factory fire and businesses started closing their doors. Dolores is an adorable nerd who aspires to become a video game developer to make adventure games. And she even got a job at her favorite game company, Mucus Phlegm, much to the disappointment of her uncle, Chuck Edmund, who owns Thimbleweed Park's pillow factory and the luxurious Edmund Hotel, and wanted Dolores to continue their family legacy. But he too passed away recently and had big secrets of his own. Secrets that Dolores wants to uncover and find out what happened to her dad, whose name is Franklin Edmund and is also one of the 5 playable protagonists. Franklin, voiced by Alex Zahara, got some severe insecurity and low self-esteem issues and is too much of a wuss to stand up for himself.
Uncle Chuck never should have talked to you like that.
He's right. My idea was worthless. I'm worthless.
Due to the pillow factory having been shut down ever since the factory fire, he wanted to turn it into a stuffed toy factory, much to his brother's Chuck's disapproval.
I'm meeting some promising investors. I know they'll believe in my plan to turn the dying pillow factory into a highly profitable stuffed toy factory. It can't fail.
But before he could meet up with the investors in secret from Chuck, he is murdered by someone and became a ghost whose soul is bound to the Edmund Hotel. And lastly, but definitely not least since he's my favorite out of the 5, Ransom the Clown, voiced by Ian Corlett.
Hello, faces. I'm Ransom the insult clown. I hope no one gets their feelings hurt easily, and if you do, it's your own fault for not being able to take a joke.
An insult clown whose comedy is all about insulting people and making others laugh at their expense. He's a massive cynical jerk, but in a funny way. He used to be rich and famous, but on one fateful evening during his show at Thimbleweed Park Circus, he insulted a wrong person, a gypsy woman, Madame Morena, who also happens to be a mistress of the dark arts, and cursed Ransom to never be able to remove his makeup. His misfortunes didn't end there, and now Ransom is merely just a shadow of his former self, living at the old abandoned circus grounds, hated by everyone.
You!
But that's okay because he hates everyone else too. He still wants to make a comeback though, and for that he needs his prototype Ransom the Clown doll that is most likely still inside the closed pillow factory. And he swears. A lot.
You! Go yourself! 138 bucks in interest, you loan shark! Oh, and a giant slice of talking pizza totally blends in here in a town that doesn't have a pizza joint, right? Holy
Oh, you said it, clown.
I'm bored now. I was just kidding. I'm not sorry. He was a... What the... You can't carry this... This makeup and that old... My lady!
Which you would think will get old and even annoying over time. But it really doesn't. Ransom is hilarious and one of my most favorite adventure game protagonists of all time. Then the side characters, the most memorable one being the previously mentioned Sheriff Reno.
Nice to meet you, Agent of Reno's. Looks like you heard about our little murder Reno out by the bridge, huh?
There is nothing little about murder, sir.
Who is also the coroner Ahu and the hotel manager Abu. He practically runs half the town all by himself, while at the same time fooling the townsfolk to think that the sheriff, the coroner, and the hotel manager are different people just by changing the way he talks when switching roles. It's very silly. The Pigeon Brother paranormal plumbers, who are actually sisters, and always going on about the signals. Leonard, the Quickie Pal convenience store clerk and a stoner who also appears to be a cousin of Bernard. one of the protagonists from Maniac Mansion and Day of the Tentacle. And there's many other charming and strange, albeit not very deep characters, each with their own fun quirks, and all excellently voice acted with personality. Graphically, Thimbleweed Park stays true to its roots, using pixel art similar to Maniac Mansion and Monkey Island, looking like a lost adventure game from the 90s. But with modern touches and improvements when it comes to number of colors and pixels used, animation, lighting, high resolution and widescreen support, and other special effects, like multiple background layers in a way that were not feasible 3 decades ago. Some scenes especially stood out to me as gorgeous. Artistically, Thimbleweed Park has the best of both old school and modern gaming worlds. The soundtrack, composed by Steve Kirk, also stands out on its own as a homage to the golden age of adventure games with its cunningly tongue-in-cheek, troubling, lonely, occasionally eerie and even haunting tone that never got too repetitive or tiresome to listen to. It's the kind of music that fits a mysterious detective story like a glove. It's not the greatest soundtrack that I have ever heard though. I don't think I would listen to it a lot outside of the game, but inside the game it works excellently. The other ambient and background sounds also enhance the atmosphere even further, making the game much more immersive. When it comes to gameplay, Thimbleweed Park loyally follows the DNA of its 19th predecessors without changing or modernizing practically anything. You get an inventory space on the bottom right for your dozens of items that you'll be picking up with your 5 protagonists, each with their own inventory of course. And on the left we got the traditional command table with 9 different verbs: open, pick up, talk to, push, etc. that you select and then click on the item in your inventory or another object in the environment or character to perform the said action on them. Naturally, you can do some quick actions by simply clicking on stuff around you to look at or use them. Very simple and old school, yet engaging gameplay. If you have played adventure games like this before, you'll feel right at home playing Thimbleweed Park. While Thimbleweed Park plays and feels like adventure games did back in the good old days, the developers have wisely added some quality of life improvements even after the game's initial launch, which I'll talk about more later. They added a highlight feature that highlights all the interactable objects in the environment around you, so you are not forced to do traditional pixel hunting. Unless you want to do exactly that and hunt and pick up all the 1 pixel sized specks of dust that you find throughout the game. What happens when you collect all the specks of dust? Nothing, unfortunately. But it was fun finding and collecting them all. Anyway, another quality of life feature that I really like is the map that you can use to fast travel around Thimbleweed County with ease, and every character, except for Franklin, can get one. Every protagonist has their own to-do list, so you can easily keep track of things that you have to do on each character. While all the protagonists have their own personal tasks to do, they are all headed to the same destination. What I also like about the protagonists is that the developers gave them their own unique skills in a subtle way. The game doesn't straight out say what each character can or can't do, and instead respects the player's intelligence to figure them out by themselves. For example, only Ray and Reyes can use the fingerprint kit because they are federal agents. But they can't enter the old circus grounds because it's legally speaking Ransom's private property and they would need a warrant to enter, so only Ransom himself and Dolores can go in there. Dolores is the only one who can use the tube puller to remove and insert vacuum tubes of various Tron machines. Ransom is the only one who apparently isn't afraid of heights, being a circus clown, so only he can climb up to the top of the radio tower.
The circus freak will climb the ladder.
And Franklin is a ghost, so he can't interact with the environment like the living can, so he has his own set of verbs like moan, wail, despair, etc. He can float through doors and interact with objects by zapping electronic devices and blow in chilling air that can freeze water. Thimbleweed Park has 2 difficulty modes, casual and hard, and I really like how they handle the difficulty modes in this game. They work like normal and Mega Monkey modes in the Curse of Monkey Island in a sense that the hard mode has more puzzles overall, adding extra steps to the puzzles that already exist in the casual mode, and they are more complicated. What there's also more in hard mode is content, as in characters to meet and areas to explore that are not accessible in casual mode, simply because you don't need items from those places to solve the puzzles. Places like the radio station and the arcade. Basically, half of the full game is missing from casual mode. But it's only side characters and side quests that are missing, so you are still getting the full main story in casual mode. The reason why I like this is because if you have played the game first on casual mode, you would have a good reason to play through the hard mode as well to see what else is there in Thimbleweed Park. Not just for the extra challenge. It took me more than 20 hours to beat the hard mode blind, and casual takes about half that time. Now let's talk about the bread and butter of this game, The puzzles. Namely those in the hard mode, which is the way Thimbleweed Park was obviously meant to be played. They were a delight and challenge to solve. You'll be picking up and carrying dozens of items with 5, well, technically 4 characters, since Franklin as a ghost can't pick up the same stuff. So very item-focused puzzles. They are fun and clever, and while some of them do require some bending of logic, as you might expect from a humoristic game like this, they are never too obscure. And some puzzles require multiple characters in different locations to solve them, similarly to Day of the Tentacle. And like I said earlier, some characters simply can't do specific things. So if you get stuck at a puzzle with one character, or they refuse to go somewhere giving you a lame excuse, try if someone else can do it. Thimbleweed Park's puzzles are just really well designed and enjoyable. I got stuck on many occasions for long periods of time, and it was great. I know that may sound like a weird praise to give, but if I had beaten this game without struggling with the puzzles at all, I would have been disappointed. I came for a traditional, hard-to-crack, old-school adventure game experience, and that's exactly what I got. Because all the puzzles overall are good, it's hard to choose my favorites, but I would say all the ones where the protagonists had to cooperate, and when I had to think which characters would be the right ones for specific tasks. The only puzzle that I would criticize is the one at the very end. You get this one obscure item for Dolores, and most certainly don't know what to do with it. You must go and watch their Kickstarter video where they show where to use the item. I know that this is a very minor nitpick, but I don't care for puzzles that require you to check something outside of the game. Soon after Thimbleweed Park's release, Terrible Toybox has released more content to the game in the very same year. One of those things being a quality of life improvement, the Hinttron 3000 TM. The automated hint line that you can call in-game using any functional phone if you get really stuck and don't know what to do.
It says, need help playing Thimbleweed Park? Call the fully automated Hinttron 3000 trademark at 4468. Who needs a hint?
Don't worry, it won't work like the hint lines did in real life. Hinttron 3000 is free to call anytime. On the same patch, they also added new conversations for the protagonists talking amongst each other. Previously, you could have criticized how the game tells its story by pointing out how the protagonists don't discuss their current situation, goals, or what they should do, and yet they are still helping each other out to solve puzzles just because the player makes them. Although you could argue it also makes sense given the big revelation at the end. But it still admittedly felt weird how Franklin, a ghost who is invisible to the living mind you, and the rest of the gang still work together, despite the other characters not knowing about the helping ghost's presence. But now our main cast, except for Franklin obviously, can talk to each other, tell how they feel, what they think, and that they should probably work together to get into the Pillow Factory. A bit later they opened the arcade that was closed at the game's launch. You can play some of the arcade games there if you find a treasure that is not just a lame t-shirt this time, but a sack of tokens you can use on the arcade machines. Naturally, you need to solve some new optional puzzles to find the X that marks the spot. A familiar navigating head also makes a return to help you find the treasure. About a year later, in 2018, they released their first and only DLC for the game, Ransom Unbeeped, that uncensors Ransom's dialogue. If you wanted to hear all the swear words that come out of the crude clown's mouth, now you can for a low price of less than a couple or even less than $1, depending if it happens to be on sale. I haven't used it myself because I think Ransom is simply funnier when 1/3 of his words are censored with beeps. And lastly we got Dolores, a Thimbleweed Park mini-adventure. It's not a DLC to Thimbleweed Park, but its own standalone game, and, most importantly, free to play. It started out as a prototype for Ron Gilbert's new point-and-click adventure game engine, and grew into a full little game. It was released in 2020 as thanks to fans who were stuck at home due to the global pandemic, so that was a very nice gesture from Terrible Toybox. Dolores has taken a break from her job at Mucus Phlegm Games, and got a job at the local Thimbleweed Nickel News as a photographer. You are given an assignment list with 5 story topics Natalie wants you to take photos of, like something related to the 4th of July, road safety, public service piece about picking up trash, etc. Some of the things you need to take photos of are easily figured out, some not as easily. Note that this is basically a prototype given out for free, so the game doesn't have voice acting and you can't save freely. The game only saves your progress after you bring in 5 current assignment photos for the editor of Nickel News. And there is 30 assignments in total. Nor is this a sequel or prequel to Thimbleweed Park, so the story doesn't have any connection to the main game. But it's a fun little pastime for people who just can't get enough of Thimbleweed Park or puzzle solving. Thimbleweed Park doesn't try to reinvent the wheel or bring anything new to the adventure gaming genre. Instead, it reminds us why we fell in love with point-and-click adventure games in the first place back in the day, and demonstrates why this simple yet engaging gameplay formula worked in the 90s and still works today, 3 decades later. The protagonists as well as the side characters are fun, likable and memorable and well voice acted. The game looks very retro with its lovingly created pixel art, but also has modern touches to it to make it look even better and breathtaking in places. The soundtrack also works brilliantly to create the right, spooky atmosphere fitting for a murder mystery with paranormal elements. The puzzles are very item heavy and old school, just the way I like them, and most importantly very well designed and balanced to be challenging but not logically too absurd even in hard mode. The story was intriguing and the ending mind-blowing to me, although not everyone likes it. I'm not saying that Thimbleweed Park is the best adventure game ever made, but for me, it's the perfect kind of point-and-click adventure game that checks all the right boxes, and I honest to God can't think of any serious flaws that bothers me or holds the game down. It really depends on if you like these sort of old school and traditional adventure games. As for what Terrible Toybox has been working on after Thimbleweed Park, well, I'm sure most of you already know, but their next title is undoubtedly the most anticipated adventure game of this year: Return to Monkey Island. That's right, Ron Gilbert, the original creator of the first 2 games, actually got to make his own sequel to the second game, LeChuck's Revenge. I never thought I would see that day. And what's even better, it's coming out very soon. Tomorrow actually, at the time of making this video. On September 19th. And you can bet that I'll start playing it on its release day. If Thimbleweed Park is anything to go by, and the fact that Ron Gilbert is on the helm of the development team, Return to Monkey Island is going to be one of the best adventure games of 2022, just like Thimbleweed Park was in 2017. And there you go, folks. Those were my thoughts on Thimbleweed Park. What are your thoughts on the game? Excited for Return to Monkey Island? Of course you are. I mean, who isn't? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.